A warm welcome back for the final time today. It's encouraging to see so many familiar faces from this morning's session for staying with us. So let's move on to our final panel discussion on waste strategies. Currently, councils are spending £852 million a year on waste collection, creating a need and want to digitise waste services. The UK government pledged to leave the environment in a better condition for the next generation in its 25-year environment plan. So we'll be looking at technologies and processes that should contribute towards this goal. We'll explore how the uses data, the challenges and areas for improvement, and ultimately how to extract the data to improve public services. Data, as we all know, can be used to build better communities and services by minimising waste, promoting resource efficiency, and reducing its carbon output, all contributing to minimising landfill use. And zero waste to landfill status is an initiative many local authorities are committed to overall to reduce carbon output. Well, joining me for this discussion, I'm very pleased to welcome some leading lights in this field. Derek Rooney, Waste Programme Director, Local Partnerships. Dr. Adam Reed, President of the Chartered Institute of Waste Management. Trevor Nicol, Assistant Director of Environment and Operations at St Helens Council. And Services Team Manager, Northwest Leicestershire District Council. I'll put my teeth back in, Leicestershire District Council even. Any questions from you are, of course, really, really welcome. So big welcome to my final panelists of the day. It's really nice to see you all there. Derek, we're going to start off with you, if we may. One of the main confusions, I think, with the public and that we have as a family, if I'm honest, is what is and what isn't recyclable.
Yeah, it's a good question actually, because even working in waste management, I sometimes find it confusing what I'm putting in my recycling bin and what should actually be there. And we are moving into smart technology, so we all getting used to things like QR codes on various items. And the other kind of key area we have, which is probably one of the kind of areas that leads to confusion, is that most local authorities collect their waste in different ways, and the materials that are collected are actually then treated differently at different material recovery facilities. So we have no two collections that are the same, no two material recovery facilities that are the same. And it's quite confusing even for us professionals to realise what plastics are recyclable and which plastics aren't recyclable. So what I was thinking was, we're getting used to QR codes. Could we make QR codes smarter? Could we start using QR codes actually on Recycl It? And we wouldn't have to look at them all the time, because one of the key things is, I know I can recycle a plastic bottle. It's plastic trays. Some of them are recyclable, some of them aren't recyclable. But as you get used to that process, QR code, scan it, have a look and see if you can put it in the bin or not.
That's a fantastic idea. Adam was sort of nodding away there. I mean, Adam, why is waste composition and weight data so important for delivering improvements? And what do you think to the idea of this QR code to help us all?
Yeah, hi Helen. I mean, QR code is not a bad idea, and let's be honest. If my mum can get what a QR code is and use it properly, then there's a good chance that the general public are going to get it right more often than not. Anything that keeps it simple is definitely a favourable opportunity, I would suggest. But in terms of getting the data right, I think composition is critical. If we take a mix of materials from your bin and put them through a facility and try to do something positive with them, if we don't understand the composition, then our first job is understanding the composition. So immediately we're not being efficient because we're having to work out what's there. Then we have to take out the unwanted or the wrongly presented or the just, I wish I could recycle this if only. And then we get to the materials you want. So you've got to, there's a lot of effort to go in if you haven't got the right materials coming in the first place. So composition data is really important for you designing the downstream system that comes after collection, if you like. But understanding quantities and tonnage data is also important, because then you work out how often do we have to visit a business compared to how often we visit a household. And, are you getting more glass on a daily basis than you are plastic, in which case you need a different frequency of collection from those businesses. So understanding data is what gives you efficient collection and therefore efficient processing.
Trevor, what role does data play where you are at St Helens?
I think for St Helens and lots of other local authorities, understanding where we collect. So here at St Helens, we collect from 90,000 households every week for their recycling. And we need to put different messages out. So in previous authorities, what we've looked at is actually really understanding what we're collecting from what households. So we can then do things like door knocking or direct mailing to those households and encourage them to recycle more or different things. So it is really it's getting that down to a granular level. Previously, as a local authority, we would just send a mailing out to every household, which we would upset half the households because they said, oh, I'm already recycling that. And the other half of them say, just didn't care. So by really knowing the data, what we're collecting, what we're not collecting, what's dirty, what's clean, we can really nail that down. And it costs huge amounts of money to do that door knocking. Recently done a campaign, we managed to get down to street level, saying where they were having an issue of contamination or not recycling the right information. So we managed to do some real hand holding, speaking to Adam's mum, getting her to really explain what to do, how to put it in the right bin. And that really works, but we just need to have that data trail, and it's from collection through to our sorting facilities and then back out to the sort of household level. And that just takes us all working together as an industry.
How does it work where you are, Claire? You're in Leicestershire. How do you use data to improve the service that you provide?
Yeah, so similar to what Trevor said, it's all about gathering the data to understand where the low participation rates of recycling are. We have in-cab software that our crews use, and they will tick off a road when they've completed that. That goes into our back office function. So if a resident's going to report a misbin or anything like that, it automatically goes straight through to them, and it saves a lot of communication with us at the back office. But also they will identify where there aren't any bins being put out, or if there's high contamination levels in the containers that they present in. And from that data, we can use that to engage with the lower participation communities, to work with them, do some communications, and just look at what the barriers are to recycling.
It's sort of music to my ears, Claire, to hear you say, because one of the things I worry about where we are is that we carefully split it all off into, to glass and paper and plastic. A few people in our area say, oh, well, it just all ends up in one pile anyway, and they don't recycle it. But it's really refreshing to hear that taken seriously, and where people aren't doing a good job, you're there to sort of encourage them. That's an important part, I'm guessing, Claire, is it?
Yeah, we've found that is one of the barriers, that people don't actually believe it's being recycled. We've had things, oh, well, it just goes straight to the tip anyway, they landfill it. So we try and do quite a lot of communication, because we run our own waste transfer station, and we encourage people to come and see it, and we do videos all about it, and just to tell them where the recycling materials are going, just to say, actually, yeah, it is being recycled and you're doing really well.
Yeah, it's important, isn't it? I mean, we really need the consumer or the resident engaged, if you like. I mean, Derek, we already employ smart waste management for waste collection. I think the sensors, aren't there, on bins, which tell you when they're nearly full, and GPS vehicle tracking and all that kind of thing. Can we get smarter?
I think we can actually use the technologies we have at the moment in different ways. So, I mean, building on what Claire was saying about participation rates and the fact that they can monitor the vehicles at the moment using GPS, they know which bins have been put out, which ones haven't been put out in particular days. I think we can actually use that data in a smarter way. And one of the other ways of potentially using GPS is on the commercial side. So I think, one of the things we don't like seeing is lots of bins out in the high street for commercial collections. So, and it's whether or not we can actually use it in a smarter way. And similar to when you're collecting parcels, or parcels are getting delivered to your house now, you get a 10-15 minute warning that the postman's going to arrive. So on a similar basis, we could even move on to doing smarter collections for commercial waste, where the vendor gets 10-15 minute notice that the vehicle's on its way to their premise. They could then put the bin out, and then using the leveling part of it, so looking if the bins are full again. Do the frequency of collections for commercial waste are pretty standard, pretty set for each customer. Again, you could use smarter technology to actually collect on demand as part of that process, potentially reducing the mileages for vehicles, or having vehicles not full.
Going back to Adam in a minute, just briefly back to you, Claire, is that where fleet telematics data comes in, and is that something that you're using in Leicestershire?
Absolutely, yes. We're actually due to install some driver ID fobs, and they will identify the drivers and their driving style. And what that will give us is which drivers are harsh braking, speeding, idling, things like that. All things that take up more fuel, but also create wear and tear on the vehicle. So I'm quite looking forward to seeing what efficiencies that will give us. But I'm led to believe it does make quite a big difference when you're looking at actual driving styles.
We've got Trevor and Adam nodding away there. Adam, briefly, presumably you're agreeing there, and then I've got another question for you.
Yeah, my day job, I work for Suez, who are one of the large waste contractors doing a lot of collections, both municipal and commercial. And yeah, we've been using it on our fleets for a long time, because training the drivers and the crews to be, better custodians is critical, but also looking at the money that could be saved by, not over wearing and tearing the tires, not, over wearing and tearing the brakes is absolutely critical, I think, in this modern resource important age that we live in.
Drawing on your experiences of the last 20 years, Adam, should we be focusing more? I'm not trying to make you sound old or anything. Should we be focusing more, do you think, on waste prevention and changing consumer attitudes, or on low carbon treatment? Is it a mix of the two? Is it a blend?
Unfortunately, it's not an either or, is it? I think the last 20 years, I mean, post war, the baby boom, it was all about economic growth, and we became so wedded to a linear economy. You make stuff, you buy stuff, you use stuff, and off you go, and keep it cheap, and let's keep moving. And I think now we've realised that resources are finite, and that climate change is just one indicator of the problem that we've created. And so, trying to reduce consumption. And therefore, more importantly, reducing resource use, because you can keep materials going round and round with different business models, or reuse or repair, remanufacture, but just not buying stuff because it's got it's frayed at the edges. What about repatching it, for example? I think we've got to start to get consumers to realise that model just isn't. Not only is it not sustainable, it's leading to catastrophe. But on the other hand, there are some really great technologies coming online that are going to reduce the carbon impact of our system as a whole. So if we can reduce the carbon impact of society at the front end of our infrastructure, and reduce the carbon impact of the system once we've got the material, then that's the future. But both of those have got to go together. We got one without the other will not solve the problem we're in.
Will not work. One of the things that drives me mad, and don't even get me started on it, is the plastic waste in supermarkets. You walk into a supermarket, any supermarket, not naming any names, but you can buy carrots in plastic or carrots not in plastic, bananas in plastic or bananas not in plastic. Why do the big supermarkets not just say, zero tolerance? If you want us to stop your things, it won't be in plastic. You do your shop, and wherever you shop, you come back and it's like, this is insane how much plastic, and that would make a massive difference, I think. And, Trevor, the industry can change, can't it? But what is the role of residents and consumers?
So residents are key. They're the people who are spending some of that money. So just as you said about the supermarket, supermarkets put things in plastic because people buy it in plastic. So we could all stop doing that. We could change some of elements that might be more expensive, but we have got some of those controls. There's normally options to buy your 5 apples in a bag or 5 apples loose. We need to make those changes. It's really educating our consumers to make the right choices, because actually we talk about plastic as this evil thing. Plastic's really good in some cases and can be used really well. It's how we use it badly. So I think there's a lot of education about using items. So we've seen this with paper carrier bags that don't necessarily have the same benefit as a reusable bag, but a reusable bag needs to be used time and time again. It's not a reusable bag as every time you go to the supermarket you buy a new one. It actually use about 20% more 20 times more plastic in that kind of bag than you would have a single-use plastic bag. So we really need to think, some of that's about us educating, and us educating people properly about what is good and what isn't so good. It is about minimizing. It isn't, oh, this is the latest new television, so we're going to buy a new one and throw the other one out. It's being proud that you bought something from sort of Facebook marketplace as a reused sofa, because actually it's probably got a perfect life, and you'll get something else there where people can be quite funny about that reused item or pre-loved item. It is when you go around the shop is really deciding what you buy. Do you buy something in a glass jar because I'm going to use that glass jar to make my jam at the end of the season? So you really need to think about when you come to recycle stuff that you bought, it's too late. It's when you do your shopping, you really need to think about why you're buying it, what you're buying it in, what you will accept as packaging, what you don't need. But there are some good packaging out there, and I think we have to be careful about just chucking everything out, because if not, we'll end up with a lot more food waste. So it's a balance, but it's all about education.
It's education, it's changing mindset, and I think partly it's also taking some of the bad choices away. I think while there's plastic bags at a till, whatever price they are, people will still purchase them and won't remember their fabric ones until we sort of, you know, get to the point where if you forget your fabric bag, the options to buy one or carry your bits in your arms. I think there's a lot that can be done on that front, I think. Claire, give us a sense of the magic that's happening at Leicestershire Council and how you're planning to reduce your carbon output in waste services. What are the key things that you're targeting and the things that hopefully are going to work very well for you?
Okay, well, in a nutshell, for waste services, it's the fleet. We commissioned a study into the council's carbon impact, and that showed that our fleet contributes to more than 10% of the greenhouse gas emissions for the whole council, and that's just 100 vehicles, or just over 100 vehicles. We've recently completed our fleet decarbonisation project, and that identified that 54% of the CO2 emissions were from our refuse vehicles. So that shows that's a big area that we need to be tackling. So then following on from that, we've looked at all the different zero emission technologies that are out there. Some are ready now, some are due to mature in a few years' time. And the studies enabled us and given us direction for where we need to go with regards to putting infrastructure in and changing the fuels. There's fuels that we can put in there now that will immediately reduce the carbon without spending a fortune on new vehicles. But again, a lot of the vehicles, the larger fleet, they're not ready for electric yet. They don't have the range and the capacity, but it's really nice to see that there's a lot that are coming onto the market and they're being trialled and it's being pushed forward. So our fleet is our big ticket item at the moment.
And just briefly, Claire, long term, will those refuse vehicles, will they be electric? Will they be hydrogen? What are you sort of leaning towards at this stage in those very big vehicles?
What I have heard, it's potentially going to be hydrogen. That's not ready yet, but with hydrogen, we need somewhere to fuel up. So along with that is the infrastructure and potential hydrogen filling station at our depot. We're looking at moving our depot, so it's the perfect time to look at creating a depot with a hydrogen filling station there. It looks like that will be the way forward rather than electric for the larger fleet.
Yeah, you've got to future-proof now. I mean, Derek, collection routes are usually optimised, aren't they, for the household collections? However, once those routes are set, they're not normally changed, I don't think, are they? Unless, for example, there's a new housing development coming into play. I mean, is this the best approach, or could we be making those work better, the collection routes?
Yeah, I mean, collection routes they're interesting because we do quite a lot of work with local authorities on collections, and part of the sort of tendering process, you usually find when a new contractor comes in, they'll reroute the collections as part of that process. But what we normally find is that's not a dynamic system. And again, I'm just wondering if there's technology out there, or the technology we have in place at the moment will actually allow us to become smarter on that. So again, looking at, Claire's looking at data sets anyway on missed bins and the bins not going out. But again, actually then using that information more dynamically to then reroute. So instead of having a set route for the contract period, you're actually doing a route adjustment every single day, and we're basically running that in the background so that the vehicles are actually getting optimized depending on the data sets you've already received over the course of the contract so far.
I'm paying attention, Derek, but I'm also flicking over to the questions because there's a question that I think might be quite good from you. For Cara, I was going to talk to you about, you know, the circular economy and path use, and how can smarter waste management ensure that materials suitable for free use are kept within that economy. But Cara's sort of chipped in on that too. She says, how can the circular economy be brought into this sector to increase reuse over recycling? So that sort of fits in with, you know, my other question for you there, Derek. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, because reuse is very high, well, very high up in the waste hierarchy. So waste hierarchy has been around for a long time, and it feeds into the circular economy. So they're all waste is actually probably one of the areas that, for a circular economy, is actually well placed for the types of collections we do and the way we manage the waste at the moment. Reuse is probably the area where we kind of do it. You know, so for instance, I will put stuff on Gumtree. People hopefully will buy it, or I'll give it away for free. That's reuse. The councils will have reuse centres. Some of them will have the bring sites. They basically set aside materials. When you go into the websites, a lot of the councils now redirect you towards charities. So the charities will come and pick up your old sofas, your old sort of old beds, whatever, you know, is part of that process. But I don't think we're really been smart enough about it, because I mean, we're looking at other schemes that, you know, people know about, deposit return schemes and the like. That's putting the onus back on the producer, and I'm just wondering if maybe that's the way we should be doing it. Maybe we should have a more kind of bring back type approach, where we can't actually take those materials for reuse, and one of us actually take it on board. It actually goes back to the producer, and the producer has to sell it secondhand, or potentially even having supermarkets now selling secondhand goods as well as the new goods as part of their products.
I like the way you're thinking as a charity shop person who loves a charity shop, finding uses for old things. That's quite appealing to me. Casazina says, are there reliable sources of information that could help us to compare the carbon emissions impacts of waste reduction versus recycling? Adam, is that one you could tackle?
Yeah. Life cycle assessment thinking is kind of your key set of metrics here. People have done carbon analysis. Zero Waste Scotland have got their own carbon metric. DEFRA have got a similar but not identical carbon metric, and so you can compare different activities, and you can compare different materials even. So I think we've failed to use that information because it is quite scientific, and it is kind of, you know, it's not always palatable, let's say, to the general public. But in terms of decision making, our local authority compatriots here would all have had to have done some life cycle thinking when it came to either the choice of their vehicle fleet or the choice of the infrastructure they use for reprocessing, simply because you've got to be able to tick some boxes with the Environment Agency and others in terms of we're doing the right thing. So yes, there are metrics out there and tools out there that we could use, and there's some brilliant websites that, you know, you as an individual, you know, go on Geeky or somewhere and just check out whether or not your one flight to Florida next year is going to be offset by you going vegan for 1 month of the year. I mean, I think the kinds of things that you can then go, so actually my footprint as an individual is all about, you know, the number of trips I take in the car, or it's all about the type of thing I eat. So I think the transparency of those kind of websites, I think, are fantastic, even if they're not perfect in terms of the metrics themselves.
Yeah, we do have to all sort of, I don't know, all get a bit more, make this part of our sort of daily lives and take a lot more interest in it if we're going to make a difference, because it's the little things that we can all do as individuals that are all going to contribute. Adam, sticking with you for a minute, I host a lot of conferences like this, whether it be in the NHS or the rail industry, and we always get down to skills, and we always talk about skill shortages. What skills are going to be key for decarbonising the sector, and do we have suitably skilled people to deliver the changes that we need?
That's a great question. The Chartered Institution has done an analysis of this, and it's going to be my theme throughout my presidency. But, you know, if you move from a system that's, you know, 45% recycling at best and 45% energy recovery to one that's, you know, zero landfill, 20% reuse, 20% repair, huge amount of increased recycling. No, we're not ready for it yet. So what skills are we looking at? More repair, better environmental designers. We're going to be looking at chemical recycling. We're going to be looking at process engineers who can do, great efficiency flow of materials. You're going to be looking at vehicle designers, fuel engineers. I mean, the opportunities are almost endless, but most of those jobs, you would argue, are outside of the traditional waste and resource management sector today. So it's how do we partner with other sectors to make sure that we're not fighting over the green jobs of tomorrow. And that's why I'm so passionate about CIWM working alongside other trade bodies from other sectors and other professional institutes to make sure that government is hearing a clear steer about just how many green apprentices we need and just how many green MSCs we're going to need in the future to make sure we've got enough experts at the right time to make sure that this transition works.
Trevor, how do you think the industry is going to upskill its workforce to meet the needs of what is a very, very fast changing industry?
And I think that's about looking at what we're doing. So at the moment, as an authority, we're looking at hydrogen bin lorries. So they are just on the edge of being done. So we're working with one of the suppliers. And the discussion we're having is a little bit about the vehicle and a lot about the skills and the infrastructure that we need. So St Helens, there's huge amounts of discussion around hydrogen networks. We've got Pilkington Glass that have already started to change some of its gas to hydrogen burners. So we're really taking hydrogen as a sort of an area of interest. So we're looking at, if we're going to buy a hydrogen vehicle, we also want to make sure that we've got trained up fitters and we're bringing services that we can offer to other people. So I think what you'll find is, Adam said, the skills section that traditional waste industry used to be about sort of collecting it, sorting it, burning it, burying it, maybe reusing. That's going to change quite a lot to us about how we produce energy from what we're doing, how we really remanufacture. But it's about every time we let contracts, especially as local authorities, whether that's in-house services or private sector services doing it for us, is how do we add that added value? So we're not just looking about emptying bins, we're adding on all those other support services that we need, our contracts. And we spend, as you said at the beginning, millions of pounds, multiple millions of pounds a year on our waste services. We need to sort of leverage that money to ask for more than just the bins to be emptied. It is about training, how we engage people into those services. Not forgetting, we've got within my team, we've got 12 apprenticeships of different levels, and that is the traditional services of getting people involved to empty bins, because that's not going to stop, especially in the short period anyway, in the next 20 years. So we still need to bring people on all levels and engage those into the industry.
And Claire, how do you do that? How do you engage people? Because, for me today, I am a sort of keen recycler, and I'm aware perhaps a bit more than most of waste management, but I've heard so much that's new today. How do you make sure that the information is passed on and that you can engage youngsters to want to have a career in this and see that it's much more than simply emptying bins?
Yeah, so with regards to engaging staff, we've found lately with the difficulties in HGV recruitment and actually trying to recruit loaders as well, we've had to be quite creative in the way that we've trying to recruit them. So we're even using social media now, whereas before, historically, it would have been in the job centres or just on the website, whereas now we're going out, we're putting things on the spotteds of the for the towns, just to say, come and work for us. We were aiming directly at the people that may have been back from university. So it's keeping up with the social media, I think, is where the youngsters are. But then regarding residents and engaging with those, there's still a lot of people that aren't tech savvy. So we still have to do our letter communications. We still currently send out recycling calendars. We're hoping to pull that. We're hoping to possibly have a council app that we can use. But again, there's going to be a lot of people that won't like that. So it's not a one trick suits everybody. It's looking at all the different ways. We also have to go into schools, which works really well. They're the next generation, aren't they? And they can teach their folks how to do it. So it's looking at different ways and what suits each audience.
Yeah, definitely. The kids are my two definitely are making sure that we're on the right journey in this house. Derek, just bringing you back into the conversation. Lance is saying skills are key to this, as we as a college are looking at future requirements with very few information from our local employers in regards to what they need. How do you see that being improved? How do you reckon we can do that, Derek? How can we make sure that colleges know what's required in this kind of industry?
Well, it's interesting because Adam being president of CIWM, I know other institutes, for instance, Institute of Civil Engineers, actually have school ambassadors who go into colleges, who go into schools and actually talk about engineering, and so it's something that Adam is probably quite keen on for CIWM as well. It's part of that process. So it is about the profession actually going into these institutes and actually talking about what we actually do on a day-to-day basis, and it's great when you have that opportunity to have that conversation, and it can actually steer a young person in a particular direction that they probably hadn't actually thought about before.
Derek's right, isn't he, Adam? Because while we can look at the negatives of the climate crisis and realize what a mess we're in, or we can also look at it in terms of positivity and think, if we all work together and pull together, there could be many opportunities, jobs created, and particularly our young people, who I think have particularly suffered over the last 18 months. With the right training and changes in curriculum, there are all sorts of ways that they can be part of a greener future and make a difference.
Totally. There's 500,000 plus new jobs waiting to happen in a circular economy, in a green revolution where waste and resources are at the heart of decarbonising the UK. And I think, getting the Department for Education to recognise that the work of DEFRA and BAYES in particular, that this is a key issue in terms of, the future upskilling of the UK, then we can get it on schools, schools campaign and schools curricula early, because we've got the grassroots kind of initiatives. There's lots of clubs happening and lots of STEM outreach, but what we really need is it to be a core discipline. Saving the planet seems like a great place to be. We just need to allow the kids to embrace that early, because then we've got them.
Saving the planet seems a good GCSE to me, actually. I mean, you may laugh, but we leave school, don't we, without some of the key skills. I would have loved to have understood, finances a bit better. I can make rock cakes from my cookery class, and that was about it. But did I learn anything about getting a mortgage and all this kind of thing? And it's the same here. I think I think we need to revisit the curriculum panel. Adam, just coming to each of you for a sort of last thought. What should we prioritize in the short term to build momentum on decarbonisation?
Well, I think it's the small steps. We can all make sensible decisions about what we do or don't do, what we buy or don't buy, how we recycle, get it right first time. And then longer term, I think we have to embrace the fact that climate change is here, and together we need to work on solutions around, unsustainable packaging. So collaboration on one hand, small steps on the other.
Trevor, your priorities at St Helens?
So mine's two bits. It's getting everybody to make one small change. So it is about making sure they either recycle one thing more, or they don't buy one thing. So there's that bit, the residents. But for us, it's probably our fleet. We will be moving away from a traditional diesel fleet because of the amount of emissions they generate. So whether that's electric or hydrogen, that's our pledge that we can make a big difference, and actually reasonably quickly.
Derek, your final word?
Probably more informed consumers. So when you do, we touched on this. Trevor touched on people going to the supermarkets and having choices. So the supermarkets are real clever now. You get a machine. It tells you, adds up your prices as you go along. Why can't a machine also tell you what your carbon footprint is? And why can't it say at the end of your bill, when you get your receipt, it tells you how much impact you've had on that shop? This is part of it. So if you're educated more, if the information was readily available to you, to me, that would be a big step forward.
Claire, I know this is your very first panel. No pressure, but you're going to have the final word of the day. Can you leave us with a good, positive thought from Leicestershire?
Positive thought. Well, just to echo what the others said, our target is the fleet, but I'm going to say what Whitney Houston was said. The children are the future, so we need to teach them, and I think it's education all the way.
Can I just say, Claire, this might be your first panel, but it certainly isn't your last. I think it might have been Derek's first as well, but you were absolutely fantastic, all of you. And I really, really hope that you're going to join us for another of these events, because I think you've made waste sexy, and you've inspired our audience, I think, to make us feel that we can all make a difference. And hopefully those in your industry can be inspired by what you're doing work-wise. So many thanks. You were absolutely brilliant. That was the fifth and final debate of the day. And with that, we draw to a close on a fantastic day of guests and delegates networking across our PSE365 platform. We've covered a solutions in our attempt to reach climate change targets and to reduce emissions by 78% by 2035, which isn't that far away. As mentioned throughout, all of today's content will be available to view on demand within the platform at your leisure within the next 24 to 48 hours. And remember, our networking tools remain open year-round with an ever-growing community of registered innovators. I look forward to seeing many of you back again for future events we're hosting throughout the year. Perhaps bring some of your colleagues with you next time to our event covering digital transformation, which is happening on October the 14th, so just a few weeks away. If you're a winner in our gamification challenge, the PSE team will be in touch to discuss your prize options. Separate to gamification, today's event was CPD certified with 1 CPD point earned for every hour of live content watched. We're going to collate all of this information and distribute the CPD certificates. Before we go, I'd like to extend a special thank you to our really brilliant team behind the scenes at Public Health Executive, who have worked tirelessly, not public health, public sector executive, who worked tirelessly both today and in the run-up to ensure that we could put on such a positive and hopefully inspiring event. So from me and everyone at PSE 365, thank you for attending today, giving us your time and attention. Have a great evening, and I'll see you again, hopefully at our next event. Bye for now.